The forest was quiet except for the sound of an axe striking wood. Each hit was strong, steady, and filled with something heavy. Grief. A man named Eli Ward stood alone in the clearing, his breath turning white in the cold air. He wore an old jacket torn at the shoulders, and his hands were rough from days of work. He had been here for weeks, cutting trees and stacking logs, trying to build a cabin deep in the mountains where no one could find him. Eli had once lived in the city. He had a wife, Anna, and a small boy named Ben, but that was before the war, before the fire, before the night everything he loved was taken. The house was gone, his family too, and only ashes remained. People said he was lucky to survive, but Eli didn't feel lucky. He felt empty. So he walked away from the ruins of his life and found this lonely place, miles away from any road, any voice, any memory. Now, the forest was his only company. He built the cabin log by log, not for comfort, not even for shelter, but because it gave him something to do. Something to stop his thoughts. When his arms grew tired, he didn't stop. When night fell, he worked by the light of a small lantern. At night, strange sounds echoed through the woods, soft rustling, quiet footsteps, faint breathing near the trees. Eli thought it was animals at first, but sometimes the noises felt too careful, too aware. Once, while he was chopping wood at dusk, he felt someone watching him. He turned quickly, axe ready, but saw only the wind moving the tall pines. Still, the feeling didn't leave. The next morning, something strange happened. He found a piece of fruit on his doorstep. It wasn't from the forest, it was smooth, red, and glowing faintly under the frost. He looked around, calling out, "Who's there?" No answer came. Just silence. The fruit smelled sweet, almost unreal. He left it on the table untouched. That night, the sound came again. A soft movement like bare feet stepping on snow. He went outside with his lantern, shining it through the trees. The light caught something, a flicker of silver eyes, wide and frightened before vanishing behind a fallen trunk. Eli stood still, his heart racing. He wasn't sure what he saw. Not an animal, not a human, something else. He spoke into the darkness, his voice low. "I don't mean harm. Whoever you are, just stay away from the fire. It's dangerous here." For the next few days, the watching continued. He'd hear breathing just beyond the tree line. When he looked up from his work, he sometimes caught a shape moving between the shadows. A figure small and thin, wrapped in what looked like torn silver cloth. The fruit appeared again, this time with a strange blue flower beside it. He realized it was an offering. Maybe a way of saying thank you, or maybe a test, Eli didn't know. But instead of fear, he felt something else, curiosity. Maybe even a quiet sense of peace. Someone or something was out there, watching him not with anger, but with care. He decided to do the same. The next morning, he left a piece of bread on the log near the fire pit. When he returned that evening, it was gone. Snow began to fall heavier now. The days grew shorter, the nights longer. Eli worked harder, building the walls of his cabin higher, making the roof strong enough to survive the winter storms. As he worked, he sometimes hummed the lullaby his wife used to sing to their son. He didn't even realize he was doing it until one night he heard the same melody, softly echoed in the woods. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat by the fire, staring into the flames, waiting. Near midnight, the sound came again. A soft footstep, closer this time. He turned, and his eyes caught a shape standing just beyond the light. A woman, or something like one. Her skin shimmered faintly, her hair glowing blue under the moonlight. Her eyes, silver and deep, stared at him with fear and sadness. Eli didn't move. He didn't even breathe. The woman looked weak, trembling, and her arm seemed injured. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Two souls lost in the same cold world. Then, before he could speak, she turned and disappeared into the trees. He stood there for a long time after she was gone. His heart beat fast, but not from fear. Something about her eyes. They reminded him of his wife when she used to stand at the window waiting for him to come home. The next morning, he found another gift outside his cabin, a bundle of herbs tied with thin silver threads. And next to it, in the snow, a faint handprint, smaller than his. Eli stared at it for a long time, then whispered to the quiet forest, "Who are you?" No one answered. Only the wind. But for the first time in months, Eli didn't feel completely alone. And far beyond the trees, hidden in the shadows, The alien widow watched him with soft, tear-filled eyes. She didn't know why this human made her heart ache, but every time he raised another log, she felt something inside her begin to rebuild too. The snow deepened around Eli's cabin. Days passed quietly, filled with the sound of chopping wood, crackling fire, and the low whistle of wind through pine branches. But silence wasn't empty anymore. Somewhere beyond the trees, someone listened. Someone watched. Every morning, Eli found new things on his doorstep. Strange fruit, blue flowers that never froze, and once a smooth stone that glowed faintly when touched. He didn't know what they meant. Gifts, warnings, or signs of friendship. But he stopped being afraid. Instead, he began leaving his own gifts in return. Bread, dried meat, a warm cloth. Each night, the forest answered. The bread vanished. The cloth disappeared. The invisible watcher was real. Eli knew that now. One evening, as the orange sun fell behind the mountains, he built a small fire outside his half-finished cabin. He sat near it, pretending to work on his tools. The woods were still, but he could feel the air shift, the quiet tension of someone close. His hand rested on his axe just in case, though his heart whispered not to use it. "Whoever you are," he said softly, his voice carrying into the dark. "You don't need to hide." No answer, just the crackle of fire and the slow fall of snow. Then movement. A flicker behind the pines. Something silver glinted between the branches. Eli turned slowly. For a brief moment he saw her again, the woman or whatever she was. Her skin reflected the firelight like moonlit glass, and her hair shimmered blue under the falling snow. Her eyes, those deep glowing silver eyes, watched him with fear and wonder mixed together. Eli's breath caught. She was real. Not a dream. Not a ghost from his loneliness. He raised his hand slowly to show he wasn't a threat. "It's all right," he said quietly. "You're safe here." She flinched, taking a small step back. Her arm was still wrapped in a torn cloth, dark with dried blood. She looked exhausted, hungry, lost. "Are you hurt?" he asked, still no words. She only stared, her lips parting slightly. Her face was beautiful but strange. Features human-like, yet not quite. Her skin had faint glowing patterns across it, like soft veins of light beneath the surface. Eli could see her trembling, whether from cold or fear he didn't know. He stood slowly and stepped aside from the fire. "If you want warmth," he said gently, "come closer. I won't hurt you." For a long time she didn't move. Then, as if fighting her own fear, she stepped forward. One slow step, then another, until she stood near the edge of the light. The fire painted her in orange and gold, and for the first time Eli saw her face clearly. Her eyes were wide, filled with pain and loneliness. Eli nodded toward the fire. "Sit," he said simply. "You'll freeze out there." She didn't understand his words, but she understood his tone. She knelt near the flames, her fingers stretched out carefully toward the warmth. For a moment she closed her eyes and sighed, a soft, tired sound that almost broke Eli's heart. He gave her a piece of bread from his pocket. She looked at it, unsure. Then she sniffed it, hesitated, and finally took a small bite. Her expression changed, surprise first, then gratitude. She looked up at him and whispered something in a language he didn't understand. Her voice was musical, low, and trembling. Eli smiled a little. "You're welcome," he said, though he knew she couldn't understand him either. The two sat there in silence, the fire between them, the forest whispering all around. For the first time in years, Eli didn't feel like a ghost wandering the earth. There was life beside him, strange and alien but alive. After a while, she looked toward the sky, where the stars shimmered faintly above the treetops. She spoke again, pointing upward, saying something softly. Eli followed her gaze. A small shipwreck light blinked faintly far away, something broken in the distance, half buried in the snow. He realized what she meant. That was where she came from. Her ship had crashed here. She was alone too. Eli's chest tightened. He didn't know her name, her world, or her pain, but he recognized her loneliness. It mirrored his own. Then the peace shattered. A loud sound rolled through the forest, a deep metallic hum followed by distant explosions. The woman's head snapped up. Fear filled her eyes. She whispered something quickly, almost praying. Eli grabbed his lantern and looked into the trees. What was that? No answer, only more sounds, machines, maybe aircraft. He couldn't tell. The woman stood, shaking, her eyes darting toward the direction of the noise. She turned to Eli, her voice urgent now, speaking in broken English for the first time. "They come. Eli's blood ran cold. Who? Her answer came as a whisper. Hunters. Before he could ask more, she vanished into the dark like a shadow, fast and silent. The forest swallowed her whole. Eli stood there, heart pounding, staring into the blackness where she'd gone. The word echoed in his head, hunters. He didn't sleep that night. He sat by the fire with his axe beside him, watching the woods. The wind howled like voices. Every sound made him flinch. And far away, through the trees, Silver Eyes watched again, this time not just filled with sadness, but with fear for him. For the first time since her crash, the alien widow felt something she hadn't in years, a reason to care if someone lived or died. And as snow covered the earth, she looked toward the man's small fire and whispered to herself in her language, "Don't let them find him." The storm came without warning. Wind screamed through the forest, ripping branches from trees and throwing snow against the cabin walls like waves. Eli struggled to keep the fire alive as the roof shook above him. The night was a roar of thunder, wind, and cracking wood. But then, beneath the noise, he heard something else. A cry. It was faint, but it was there. A desperate sound carried by the wind. He froze, listening again. It came from the woods. Without thinking, Eli grabbed his coat and lantern, pushing the cabin door open. The cold hit him like a blade, cutting deep. The snow almost reached his knees, and the wind nearly took his breath away. But he moved toward the sound. The cry came again, closer this time. He held the lantern high, its light trembling in the storm. That's when he saw her, the alien woman, half collapsed in the snow, her silver hair tangled, her skin pale and glowing faintly under the lightning. One arm hung limp and her body shook with cold. She looked up weakly, whispering something he couldn't hear. "Hey!" Eli shouted, running to her. "You'll die out here!" She didn't fight when he lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, her skin icy to the touch. He carried her back through the blizzard, every step harder than the last. Snow blinded him and his legs burned with exhaustion. When he finally reached the cabin, he kicked the door shut behind him and dropped to his knees beside the fire, laying her gently on the floor. Her lips were blue, her breathing shallow. He quickly wrapped her in blankets, feeding more wood into the fire. "Stay with me," he murmured. "Don't you dare die now." She stirred, whispering in her language again, soft and broken. He caught a few words in English, cold. "Light, safe." Eli nodded, even though she might not understand. "You're safe here. Rest." For hours he sat beside her, watching her tremble under the blankets. The firelight danced across her strange, beautiful skin, showing faint glowing lines that pulsed slowly with her heartbeat. They looked almost like stars beneath her flesh. Eli had seen many things during the war, but never something like this, so fragile yet so alive. When she finally opened her eyes, her gaze met his. Silver, deep, tired. "You help me," she said weakly, her voice trembling with effort. He smiled faintly. "Yeah, you helped me too, remember? Those fruit, the gifts." She blinked, understanding dawning slowly. "You knew?" "I guessed," Eli said, chuckling softly. "You're not very good at hiding." For the first time she smiled, just a small fleeting curve of her lips. But it changed the room. It made the storm outside seem smaller, less terrifying. As the hours passed, she spoke a little more. Her name was Lyra. She came from a distant colony destroyed in a raid. Her ship crashed here, far from any rescue. She'd been surviving alone, afraid of humans because some of them had hunted her kind before. Eli listened quietly, his eyes heavy with sorrow. "Humans hunt humans too," he said softly. "We're not much better." Lyra tilted her head, studying his face. "You alone?" she said slowly. He nodded. "I lost my family." His voice cracked slightly, but he didn't look away. "So I came here. To build something, to forget." Lyra's eyes softened. "No forget," she whispered. "Pain stay, but we live." Eli stared at the fire, her words echoing in his mind. She was right. The pain never really left. But maybe living meant carrying it, not burying it. Suddenly, a loud bang shook the cabin. Eli jumped, grabbing his axe. Lyra gasped and sat up quickly, panic flashing across her face. "No, not safe. They find us." Eli frowned. "Who?" She pointed toward the window. "Hunters, men, machines." He moved to the small window and looked out. In the distance, through the thick snow, faint red lights glowed between the trees. Moving, searching. His stomach tightened. They were coming. He turned back to Lyra. We have to hide. She stood shakily, her injured arm clutched close. I hide before no more. They kill all. Her words hit him hard. She wasn't just scared, she was broken from running. Eli took a deep breath. Then we fight smart. You stay quiet. I'll deal with them if they come near. Lyra hesitated, then nodded. Her trust was clear in her eyes, even through the fear. Outside, the red lights grew brighter. Voices carried faintly through the storm, human voices. Thermal reading near the ridge. Move in! Eli's heart pounded. He doused the fire to lower the heat signature, plunging the cabin into darkness. Only the faint glow from Lyra's skin lit the room now. It shimmered softly, beautiful and haunting. He turned to her and whispered, You're glowing too much. She looked down at her hands, startled, and pressed them against her chest to hide the light. Sorry, she whispered, trembling. Eli smiled faintly. Don't be, it's kind of beautiful. For a moment, even with danger outside, they shared a strange calm. Two broken souls trapped by a storm and hunted by the same fear. Then came the metallic sound of boots crunching in the snow. The hunters were here. Eli could see their flashlights sweeping across the trees, getting closer. He grabbed his axe and whispered, Stay behind me. Lyra reached out, touching his arm with her glowing fingers. You saved me, why? Eli looked at her, his face hard but gentle. Because someone should. The door rattled. A voice shouted outside, Open up! By order of the Alliance, hand over the alien. Lyra froze, her eyes wide with terror. Eli's grip on the axe tightened. The storm screamed outside, shaking the cabin walls. Inside, the fire had died, but a different kind of fire burned in his eyes now, one made of rage and defiance. He turned toward the door and whispered to her, Stay quiet. Then he stepped forward as the first heavy knock shook the cabin, and the night filled with the sound of human voices and falling snow. The pounding on the door grew louder. Snow and wind howled outside as three armed soldiers shouted, By order of the Galactic Alliance, open up! Eli stood motionless, his axe still in his hand, his heartbeat echoing louder than the storm. Behind him, Lyra crouched low behind a pile of wood near the fireplace, clutching her injured arm. Her glowing skin flickered like dying embers as fear spread across her face. Eli whispered, Don't move. Don't make a sound. The door shuddered again. Citizen, we tracked a lifeform signal here. Cooperate and you won't be harmed. Eli set his axe quietly on the table, then took a slow breath. The fire was dead, the room cold and dark except for faint moonlight. He opened the door halfway, pretending to be calm. What's all this about? Three soldiers stood in the snow, faces hidden under metal helmets, their armor shining under the stormlight. The one in front, a tall officer with a scar across his jaw, held up a scanner that beeped softly. We detected an alien signature nearby. Female, unregistered, dangerous. You seen anything unusual? Eli shook his head. Only snow and wolves. His voice was calm, steady. Been alone here for weeks. The officer stepped forward, eyeing the small cabin. You built this place yourself? Yeah, Eli said. Not much yet, but it keeps the cold out. The soldier smirked. Brave thing living out here. You're lucky. That signal's close. Could be hiding right under your nose? Eli forced a faint smile. If she's hiding here, she's doing a damn good job. The officer narrowed his eyes. Mind if we take a look? Eli's stomach turned, but he nodded. Go ahead. Nothing to hide. The soldiers entered, their boots thudding on the wooden floor. One shined a flashlight under the table. Another checked behind the half-built wall. Lyra's breath came in small, shaking gasps. Eli stood near the fire pit, blocking their view of her hiding spot. Cold night, the officer said, brushing frost off his gloves. You really live alone out here? Eli nodded. Since the war. I'm done with people. The man grunted, glancing at the walls of stacked logs. Looks solid. You build well. Shame if someone burned it down by mistake. Eli's jaw tightened. He understood the threat. I told you, no alien here. The officer looked around once more, then lowered his scanner. If you see anything strange, anything glowing or not human, you report it. Understand? Yeah, Eli said quietly. The officer turned to leave, but something caught his eye. A faint shimmer near the woodpile. His flashlight swept over it, pausing. Lyra's glowing skin, barely visible under the blankets, reflected the light for a split second. Eli's pulse spiked. He coughed loudly, stepping in front of the beam. That's my tools, he said quickly. Metal catches the light. The soldier frowned, but didn't push it. All right. The officer gave a last cold glance, then signaled to his men. We're moving out. Sweep the next ridge. As their boots crunched away through the snow, Eli stood still until the sounds faded into the distance. Then he shut the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. His hands were shaking. Lyra crawled out slowly from her hiding spot, her eyes wide. They almost saw me. Eli nodded, his voice low. Yeah, almost. She stared at him, her expression a mix of fear and wonder. You lie. For me? I had to, he said simply. They wouldn't understand. Lyra's voice trembled. They kill my kind. No mercy, why you help? Eli looked into the fire pit's ashes. Because I know what it's like to lose everything. Her gaze softened. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the wind pressing against the walls. After a while, she whispered, I stay. I help build. He turned to her, surprised. You don't have to. I want, she said firmly. We build faster, stronger. Eli studied her face, the faint glow under her skin, the quiet strength in her eyes. He saw not a creature, not a stranger, but a survivor, just like him. So the next morning they worked together. Eli cut logs while Lyra, still weak but determined, helped lift and place them. Her touch was gentle but strong, her alien technology making the work smoother. She could heat wood to bend it, shape it with her hands. Day after day, the cabin began to take form. 2 lives, 1 purpose. They didn't speak much, but something unspoken grew between them. Trust. But peace didn't last long. That evening, as the sun set, Eli heard a strange buzzing sound overhead. He looked up through the window and froze. A drone hovered above the trees, scanning the cabin with a red beam. Lyra gasped. They found me again. Eli grabbed his rifle from the wall and cursed under his breath. It must have followed their signal. The drone beeped, locking onto the cabin. A red light blinked on its underside. Lyra's eyes widened in horror. Signal sent. They come. Eli fired once, hitting the drone's core. It exploded in a flash of sparks and smoke. The echo rolled across the mountains like thunder. He lowered the gun, breathing hard. They know where we are now. Lyra's voice broke. Then, they burn all. Eli looked at her, his face set with quiet resolve. Let them try. Outside, far away, more red lights flickered in the night sky, dozens of them moving closer. The storm had passed, but a new kind of storm was coming. Lyra stepped beside him, her hand trembling as it touched his arm. You fight for me? Eli nodded slowly. No, I fight for us. And as the snow began to fall again, the cabin's small fire burned bright, defying the darkness that surrounded it. The night sky glowed red. The broken drone's explosion had drawn attention from miles away. Eli stood by the cabin window, staring up at the horizon where lights flickered, cold, mechanical, and merciless. Lyra's words echoed in his mind. They burn all. He could already hear them, distant engines, faint hums through the snowy air, like thunder hiding behind the clouds. His stomach turned. He knew how military operations worked. He'd been part of them once. First came the drones, then came the men, and after that came fire. Lyra paced near the door, trembling. Her silver hair fell across her face, her breathing quick and sharp. They bring death, she whispered. They kill everything. Eli walked to the table and grabbed his old rifle. He checked the chamber, his jaw tight. Then we don't wait. We make them regret coming here. Lyra's eyes widened. You fight them? Alone? He looked at her. I'm not alone. For a moment, silence hung between them. The fire crackled softly. Lyra's silver eyes searched his face as if trying to understand him. No one had ever fought for her before. Not after her world burned, not after her ship fell. She felt her chest tighten, something deep and painful stirring inside. Eli began to move quickly, gathering his tools, axes, wires, traps, nails. His old soldier instincts came alive. He started setting up tripwires outside the cabin, using the snow as camouflage. They'll send scouts first, he muttered. We hit them fast, disappear, hit again. Lyra followed him, still shaking. You fought before? He nodded once. Too many times she looked toward the glowing horizon. Humans fight for land, for power. Why fight for me? Eli stopped for a moment, meeting her gaze. His voice was quiet but firm. Because no one deserves to be hunted, not you. Not anyone. Something inside Lyra broke then, the cold wall she had built around her heart for years. Without a word, she touched his arm. Her skin was warm now, the light beneath it pulsing softly. "Then I fight too," Eli frowned. "You can't even lift your arm properly." Lyra closed her eyes, breathing deeply. Then, with trembling fingers, she pressed her hand against her chest. The faint light under her skin grew brighter, then brighter still. Her breathing grew heavy, her voice trembling. "My implant, I still have power." A faint hum filled the room. The air shimmered. Small metal shards lifted from her broken wristband, forming into a tiny floating device above her palm. It pulsed blue, projecting symbols into the air. Maps, signals, energy readings. Eli stepped back, amazed. "What is that?" "My survival link," Lyra whispered. "I used it to heal once, before it broke. It can help us now." The floating device emitted a beam, scanning the area around the cabin. A holographic image appeared, red dots moving closer through the forest. "They're coming," Eli said quietly. 10 minutes, maybe less." Lyra nodded, her face pale but determined. "We stand together." They worked fast. Eli loaded his rifle and spread out traps, tripwires tied to logs that could crush men or machines. Lyra used her device to create heat distortions, confusing sensors. They moved silently through the snow, 2 shadows under the dying moon. And then the first enemy arrived. A dark drone descended from the clouds, scanning the trees with a red beam. Eli fired once, straight through its lens. The drone spun, crashed, and exploded in the snow. The noise echoed across the valley. More engines answered. Within seconds, 2 armored soldiers emerged from the fog. "Movement near the cabin," one shouted. Eli ducked behind a tree and fired again. The first soldier fell. The second turned his blaster, but a sudden flash of blue light struck him from behind. Lyra's device sent a burst of energy, short-circuiting his armor. He collapsed with a grunt. Smoke rose through the snowstorm. Red lights flashed in the sky. Lyra stumbled, her knees shaking. Eli ran to her. "You okay?" She nodded weakly. "Too much energy, my body." "Not strong enough," he held her steady. "Save your strength. I'll handle the rest." She grabbed his arm tightly, her silver eyes full of fear. "No, you die, I die too. We stay together." Eli hesitated, then nodded. "All right, together." They moved back toward the cabin. The horizon glowed brighter, ships now visible in the distance. 3 of them. Small attack craft. Eli could feel the heat already, the air trembling. "They'll burn this valley," he said grimly. Lyra looked up at him, her expression soft but fierce. "Then we make them remember this place." She pressed her palm to the snow. The ground shimmered faintly, small particles of light spreading out like veins through the earth. Eli stared in awe. "What are you doing?" "My world taught us to fight without weapons," she whispered. "The soil remembers light." Seconds later, the first ship fired. A bolt of plasma struck near the cabin, but instead of exploding, it met Lyra's spreading light. The ground flashed, and the blast turned into a blinding flare that shot back into the sky. The ship tilted, engines screaming, and spiraled out of control into the mountain. Eli couldn't believe it. "You turned their fire against them." Lyra's face was pale, sweat running down her temples. "Only once. Maybe twice more." The other 2 ships circled. Smoke filled the valley. Eli could barely see through the haze. "We have to end this now." Lyra fell to her knees, her glow flickering weakly. My power, fading. Eli knelt beside her, gripping her shoulders. "Hey, look at me. We're not done yet." She smiled faintly, her voice trembling. "You sound like my mate once did." He froze, his heart twisting. But before he could speak, a massive explosion rocked the forest, another ship firing. The blast sent debris flying, and Lyra collapsed completely. "Lyra," Eli shouted, pulling her close. The light under her skin flickered like a candle in the wind. He looked up through the smoke, seeing the last ship circling for another strike. He knew what he had to do. He whispered to her, "Hold on." Then he stood, rifle in hand, eyes hard as iron, and ran into the snowstorm toward the approaching light. 1 man, 1 cabin, against the sky filled with smoke and fire. The valley burned red beneath the storm. Flames rose where the snow had once been white, and smoke turned the night sky into a dark, moving sea. Eli ran through the chaos, his boots crunching in half-melted snow, his rifle clutched tight in one hand. Behind him, the cabin, the small home he had built log by log, was half destroyed, glowing in the distance like a wounded heart. He stumbled to a stop beside Lyra, who lay motionless near the fire pit. Her faint silver glow flickered weakly beneath the soot and ash. "Lyra!" he shouted, kneeling beside her. He lifted her gently, her head resting against his shoulder. Her skin was burning hot now, too hot. Her eyes opened halfway, unfocused. "Eli," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Implant. Breaking. Inside me." He looked down, horrified. The faint lines of light running under her skin pulsed violently, like lightning trapped in glass. The device that had once saved her life was now tearing her apart. "Don't talk," he said quickly, brushing the snow from her face. "You're going to be fine. Just stay with me." She smiled faintly, a fragile, broken smile. "You still lie well." Eli clenched his jaw. Around them, explosions echoed as the last Alliance ship circled overhead, scanning the forest for survivors. "I'm not losing you," he muttered. "Not again." He carried her into the remains of the cabin, setting her gently on the floor. The roof was half gone, the cold wind cutting through the open walls. He knelt beside her, thinking fast. Her implant, it had powered her device, maybe even protected her, but now it was unstable. He had seen enough tech in the war to know one thing. If it failed completely, it could kill her. He opened his old trunk and pulled out a power coupler, a remnant from his military days. His hands trembled as he wired it to the battery unit that powered the cabin's lights. "This might just work," he whispered. Lyra watched him through fading eyes. "You risk your life." Eli didn't look up. "That's what people do when someone matters." A weak laugh escaped her lips. Not people." He finally met her gaze, his eyes fierce. "You are to me." The words made her eyes shine for a second. Then she winced in pain as another surge of energy rippled through her body. Her light flared, cracking across her skin like lightning veins. Eli grabbed the cable and connected it to her wrist, praying he wasn't too late. The cabin's power dimmed instantly. The lights flickered, then went out completely as the battery drained into her. Sparks jumped across her arm, her whole body trembling violently. "Come on," Eli whispered, holding her hand tight. "Come on, stay with me." Outside, the last ship fired a shot. The ground shook, snow exploding near the cabin. Pieces of the roof collapsed, smoke filling the air. Eli coughed, shielding Lyra's face with his arm. He didn't care about the fire or the smoke or the soldiers closing in. He only cared about her heartbeat, weak, fading. Then suddenly the cabin filled with blinding light. Lyra's body arched, the implant releasing a sharp pulse of blue energy that knocked Eli backward. For a moment everything went white. When the light faded, she lay still. Her glow was gone. Her skin pale again. Eli crawled toward her, shaking. "Lyra." No answer. He pressed his ear to her chest. Nothing. Just silence. His throat tightened. "No, not again." He gripped her hand, his own shaking violently. "You're not dying here. Not after all this. You hear me?" Then, so faint he almost missed it, a heartbeat, slow, unsteady. But there, her eyes fluttered open. "Eli," she breathed. "You saved me." He exhaled shakily, relief flooding through him. "Don't ever do that again," he whispered, half laughing, half crying. But before he could say more, the ship's engines roared overhead. The last Alliance soldiers were descending. Lyra turned her head weakly toward the sound. "They come. Again." Eli picked up his rifle. "Then I finish this." He moved toward the door, but she reached out, grabbing his sleeve. "No, let me," he froze. "Lyra, you can't even stand." Her silver eyes glowed faintly once more. "They took my world, my family. I won't run again." She rose slowly to her feet, swaying, her light growing brighter with each breath. Eli stepped closer. "You'll die if you push that implant again." Lyra looked at him with a small, sad smile. "Then I die for something worth it." He tried to stop her, but she moved past him, stepping into the snow. The wind whipped her hair, her light cutting through the darkness like a beacon. The soldiers froze as they saw her, their weapons lowering in awe. Eli ran after her, shouting, "Lyra, stop!" But she didn't. She stood tall in the burning snow, her voice calm, clear, and full of sorrow. "You call me enemy," she said, her words carrying through the storm. "But I am only what you made me." The soldiers hesitated. The ship hovered above, its red lights flickering through the smoke. Lyra raised her hand toward it. Her glow flared brighter, blinding, pure, and alive. "Lyra!" Eli shouted. Her light burst outward, flooding the valley in white fire. The snow lifted into the air, the flames twisted into sparks, and for a moment everything stopped. The ship's engines sputtered, its metal melting under the blinding wave. The soldiers dropped their weapons, shields cracking. When it was over, silence fell. The wind returned. The snow fell again, soft and quiet, covering the battlefield like a blanket. Eli staggered forward through the smoke. Lyra knelt in the snow, her body faintly glowing, her breathing shallow. He dropped beside her, catching her before she fell completely. "You did it," he whispered. She smiled weakly, her fingers brushing his face. "Now, you live, for both of us." He shook his head, his voice breaking. "No, you're not leaving me." But her light was fading again, soft and peaceful this time. "You built a home," she whispered. "Now, build a life." Her hand slipped from his, the glow in her skin fading into the snow. Eli held her close, the world around him silent again, just like when it began. Morning came slow to the ruined valley. Smoke still rose from the wreckage of the ships, curling into the pale blue sky like ghosts rising toward heaven. The snow had stopped falling, leaving behind a strange silence, and heavy, endless and pure. Eli sat in that silence beside the still form of Lyra, her faint silver light gone now, her body lying peacefully in the snow as if asleep. He didn't move for hours. His body was numb, his hands trembling from exhaustion and cold. The war had taken his family once before. Now it had taken her, the one being who had somehow made him feel alive again. Around them the forest was burned, but the cabin still stood, half broken but unbowed, its charred roof leaning like a tired soldier who refused to fall. Eli's eyes were hollow as he whispered, "You said I should build a life. But how, Lyra? Without you?" The wind answered softly, brushing through the pines, scattering flakes of ash and snow across her face. He reached out, brushing the snow from her cheek. Her skin was cool now, pale, no longer glowing, but still beautiful in the morning light. He buried her beneath the largest tree near the cabin, marking the spot with the smooth blue stones she had once left for him as gifts. Around her grave, he planted the strange glowing flowers she had brought from the forest long ago. Their faint light shimmered even in daylight, turning the place sacred. For days, Eli didn't speak to anyone. There was no one to speak to. He repaired the cabin in silence, plank by plank, as if working might fill the hollow inside him. He patched the roof, replaced the broken logs, and rebuilt the chimney stone by stone. But every time he swung his hammer, he saw her face, smiling faintly, watching him work, her silver eyes filled with quiet admiration. He talked to her sometimes, though she wasn't there. "You'd probably laugh at this roof," he said once, wiping sweat from his brow. "Still crooked." He smiled weakly at the air. "Guess I never did learn straight lines. Nights were hardest." The world outside the cabin was silent. Too silent. He would stare at the fire and imagine her voice in the crackling flames. Sometimes, when the wind howled through the trees, he could almost hear her laughter, soft, musical, fading into the snow. Weeks passed, then months. Spring began to touch the valley, melting the frost and bringing green back to the trees. The flowers on her grave bloomed brighter than ever, blue and gold light dancing in the grass. Eli would sit there each morning, drinking his coffee in silence. One day, while chopping wood behind the cabin, he heard something, a faint hum, almost like music. He turned quickly, thinking it was a memory playing tricks on him again. But then from the forest, a small orb floated toward him, glowing the same soft silver blue light that had once shone beneath Lyra's skin. Eli froze. The orb hovered near him, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Then a voice, faint, warm, familiar, whispered through the air. I kept building. Eli's breath caught. "Lyra?" The orb pulsed brighter, circling him slowly before floating toward the cabin. It settled above the door, its light spilling gently across the wood. "Home," her voice whispered again, distant but full of peace. "You made home." He felt tears rise, but he smiled. "Yeah," he said softly. "We did." After that day, the orb never left. At night, it glowed faintly in the window, like a star guarding the cabin. Eli didn't know if it was her spirit, her energy, or just a piece of her old device that had survived. But he didn't care. To him, it was her. As months turned into years, the valley changed. Nature healed. The trees grew taller, hiding the scars of the battle. The flowers from Lyra's grave spread across the hillside, glowing softly in the moonlight. Travelers sometimes passed through and saw the cabin from afar, whispering tales about the man who lived with the light. None of them knew the truth. None of them knew the story of a human and an alien widow who had built more than just a shelter. They had built something eternal. One cold evening, years later, Eli sat by the fire, now gray-haired and older, holding a small wooden carving in his hand. It was of Lyra, delicate features, gentle eyes carved with trembling but loving detail. He placed it on the shelf above the fire beside a smooth blue stone that still glowed faintly after all these years. As he leaned back in his chair, he looked toward the door, where the orb still hovered quietly. "You'd be proud," he murmured. "The roof's finally straight." He chuckled softly, the sound breaking the quiet cabin. The orb pulsed once gently, as if answering him. He smiled faintly, closing his eyes. "I kept my promise, Lyra," he whispered. "I built the life you wanted." Outside, the forest was quiet again, but not empty. The stars above the valley burned bright, brighter than ever, their light reflecting off the snow, the cabin, and the glowing flowers that surrounded Lyra's grave. Eli's cabin stood strong, rebuilt, renewed, not as a shelter for one man, but as a symbol of something greater. A home born of two worlds, and as the night deepened, a soft wind swept through the valley, carrying with it a whisper, gentle, almost like a breath. "Thank you for building with me." The cabin's fire flickered, the stars shimmered above, and the valley slept peacefully, guarded by the memory of a human who found hope in an alien's eyes, and an alien widow who found home in a human's heart. He built it log by log, and in the end she rebuilt him.